We turn now to the Middle East, where the next hostage prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas has been confirmed for Saturday. There were doubts earlier in the week as to whether this exchange would take place. Hamas said it would postpone the release due to Israel allegedly violating the terms of the ceasefire. Israel countered by threatening to resume military operations if the hostages were not delivered safely home by noon on Saturday, a deadline first proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump.
As far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out.
Joining us now to break down all of the latest developments, John Allen, Canada's former ambassador to Israel, and Arif Lalani, Canada's former ambassador to Jordan, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the United Arab Emirates. Thank you both for making the time today. John Allen, I'll start with you. It looked for a moment there as if the ceasefire might be derailed. Now it does seem like this sixth hostage prisoner swap is going to take place on Saturday. How precarious would you say the situation is at this moment?
Well, this hostage release will happen, and the many prisoners held in Israeli jails will be released. The question is going forward whether we will be able to move into the second phase. That second phase where more hostages and prisoners are to be released and Israeli IDF forces are to leave the Gaza Strip is supposed to be being negotiated now, but there isn't much in the way of negotiations happening.
Arif, do you share that assessment of the precarity, the state of the precarity, if I can put it that way?
Absolutely. I think most people right from the start weren't sure whether this ceasefire would get to stage 2 and through to stage 3. And I am very doubtful that we're going to see the end of this ceasefire agreement plan. Clearly, President Trump has other ideas.
Marco Rubio, I'll ask you, Arif Lalani, expected to visit Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates soon to talk about the ceasefire. What is the best thing he could do to try to help this along?
Well, I'd maybe sort of ask the question, what is the best thing the United Arab Emirates and the other countries that he's going to visit and the Europeans could do? You know, President Trump has this propensity to offer wildly unpalatable, seemingly unjust solutions to things. And he does that because there's a vacuum. And I think the international community, as Secretary Rubio starts to consult them, needs to actually put forward some proposals, because as much as we don't like what President Trump is saying, the reality is there are 1.2 million approximately displaced, homeless Palestinians returning to Gaza, relying on truckloads of humanitarian assistance. Well, that's not an acceptable or palatable plan either. So I think the international community really needs to step forward with some other ideas.
Okay, I do want to talk more in a moment about what we expect in terms of the proposals that some Arab states are putting forward right now. But John Allen, I would like to ask you, the International Committee of the Red Cross, which has facilitated these swaps of people between Israel and Hamas, said today it's very concerned about the condition of the remaining hostages in Gaza. What would we hope to see in terms of the timeline right now with a warning like that?
Well, the hostages have to get out as soon as possible, clearly. But we saw 3 hostages come out last week. They were weak. They were extremely thin. In Israel, they're described as almost Holocaust-like, and that has created a very severe backlash in Israel. And so I frankly don't think that that any of the men coming out are going to look much better. They have been as hostages for 15 months. Some of them have not been getting proper medical treatment or food, and they're going to be in bad shape. There's no question about it. And that's not going to be good for the continuation of the talks, because The Israelis will be riled, and the right wing in Israel may well want to take advantage of that to try and end the ceasefire and, quote, wipe out Hamas, which of course is not possible.
Yeah, because of the alarm people are feeling about what the stories they are hearing from these hostages. What do we know about the condition of the prisoners being returned from Gaza?
Well, we don't know anything, but as I say, based on what we saw last week, the people coming out are not going to be in good shape. They're certainly not going to be in as good shape as the women who were released much earlier and who are obviously being taken much better care of.
Arif, Lalani, I'd like to ask you about the efforts by Arab nations that are underway to come up with a new plan to rebuild Gaza, basically to try to get some of the things that Donald Trump is saying off the table. Reuters is reporting the possibility of a Gulf-led reconstruction fund, a deal to sideline Hamas. What do you make of that effort?
I think it's the basis of a good plan. And the United Arab Emirates and others had proposed these things several months ago. Essentially, you need a governance in Gaza that is different from the current Palestinian Authority of Mahmoud Abbas, because it is generally inept and corrupt. You need a clear guideline to a two-state solution, and you need some security on the ground. And in exchange, I think Arab countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others are willing to fund reconstruction. So the real question is, President Trump, as he does in other negotiations, has, quite clearly told you what one end of the negotiation is, which is reconstruction and investment and a property development without Palestinians. And at the other end, I think you have the Arab countries and others saying, look, we can have a reconstruction plan and a property development plan, but Palestinians need to be in control of their own land. So somewhere in there should be a convening of serious countries to try and figure out what we're going to do, because I think as long as this vacuum exists, it is going to be filled with unpalatable solutions for most people.
And Arif, I hear you saying that is what ought to happen, but do you believe that that is the path that we are headed toward right now?
I think it can be. I can see that it can be. I think it requires some leadership to take President Trump seriously, but to say, look, we're going to convene. I note that President Trump has said on his other negotiation on Ukraine that he was going to meet in Saudi Arabia, and that a member of the delegation for the Ukraine discussions was going to be his Middle East envoy. So I think there are some conversations that can happen in the coming weeks around this issue as well in the region.
John Allen, I'd like you to weigh in on what Arab states can do, or what the rest of the world can do to try to avoid things going dramatically off the rails here.
Yeah. This has been the plan since Biden was president. And for almost a year now, the idea was for a Gulf-led military force to come in, supported by the West, both in terms of money and strategic advice, to bring rule of law and control back to Gaza, so that humanitarian aid could begin to flow in a very serious way. The rubble could be cleared, and then construction could begin, first tents, prefabricated homes, and then eventually homes constructed. This is going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of money, but that has always, been the idea, and that eventually, as Arif said, you would get better governance in the PA. There would be elections. There would be better governance in the West Bank, and the PA, the Palestinian Authority, would be able to move in and begin to govern both the West Bank and Gaza. And I agree with Arif, this is what has to begin to happen. And the idea that 2.2 million Palestinians would be ethnic cleansed from Gaza is not going to happen. And not only is it immoral and illegal, but it's not in American interests. What's in American interests, what we all hope might happen, would be the big deal between Saudi Arabia, Israel, U.S., with a pathway towards a Palestinian state. And that was supposed to get Donald Trump his Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, and
Let's
this is
hope that we come back to that.
well, and this is what I do want to ask you, and I know it's folly, John Allen, to ask anyone, what do you think is on Donald Trump's mind? But looking at what has played out over the last several days, do you think Trump actively wants to thwart a peaceful path forward, or is this just more of his, sowing chaos, just the way in which he operates?
It's the way in which he operates, and to be honest, Catherine, nobody can figure it out. Yeah. You don't know whether these are the thoughts of a crazy man who just sits down and spouts out whatever comes to his mind, and then his advisors have to try and walk half of it back, and et cetera, et cetera. Nobody knows what's in his mind. I can't predict it, but we do know what is needed in the area. And if somebody can talk some sense into him, that's the way things would progress.
Okay. Arif Lalani, Canada is obviously distracted by many things right now, both another aspect of Donald Trump's agenda with the tariff threats, but also what is happening politically on the federal level. Given all of that, what do you believe is the most meaningful contribution Canada could make to what's happening right now?
Yeah, I knew you'd ask that, and I'd say it's extremely limited. Okay. And it's limited connected to these other things. Canada could do more and have more of a say if we were pulling our weight elsewhere around the world, if we were providing 2% of the budget to NATO, if we were living up to other commitments, if we hadn't just pulled out of the Congo peacekeeping mission, we could have some standing. But right now, I don't think Canada has much to offer, to be very honest.
We've only got a moment left, John Allen, but would you agree with that assessment? Well, my sense is that the only players here are the United States, Israel, Hamas, and those that have been negotiating the Gulfs, Egypt and Jordan. Those are the key players. Nobody can influence Israel except the U.S. The Europeans can't. We can't. We should be pushing for what Arif and I talked about, but that's about all that Canada can do. Keep its eye on the two-state solution and a self-determination for both peoples in this land. Okay. Listen, thank you both for taking the time to have this discussion with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Arif Lalani and John Allen.